The late afternoon sun hung lazily over Clovis, New Mexico, casting long, warm beams across the entrance of the Carver Public Library. Inside, the atmosphere was exactly what one would expect. Soft whispers, quiet page turns, and the occasional squeak of a rolling book cart. For the people browsing the shelves, it was just another calm Monday. No one suspected that within minutes, their peaceful routine would be shattered beyond imagination. At 4:06 p.m. on August 28, 2017, a young man dressed entirely in black approached the glass doors of the library. His steps were slow, almost hesitant, as if he were rehearsing something in his mind. Instead of going straight inside, he circled back toward the building's restroom. His face was blank, unreadable. But only minutes earlier, in the privacy of his bedroom, he had recorded an unsettling message, one filled with apologies, confusion, and a chilling declaration that he was about to do something, though even he seemed unsure what it would be. He apologized to his family, telling them to remember happier times. He apologized to his girlfriend, saying he loved her and had wanted to marry her someday. He insisted no one had pushed him into anything, that whatever he was about to do was entirely his decision. His voice trembled, not with fear, but something far darker, twisted into hopeless resignation. After taking a final picture on Snapchat, one that would later haunt investigators, he headed for the library's front door. For a moment, everything remained painfully normal. People read quietly, children giggled in the kids' section, librarians continued their daily tasks. Then came the sound that shattered the quiet. Gunfire, sharp, violent, echoing through the bookshelves. Panic exploded instantly. A handful of people sprinted toward a side exit, one woman grabbing a confused bystander by the arm and pulling them to safety. But many others weren't so lucky. The sound of frantic footsteps, muffled screams, and crashing furniture filled the air as the shooter moved deeper inside. In one corner of the library, a family hid behind the information desk, trembling as the gunshots grew louder. A young girl cried softly, whispering, "Papa, please save me." Her father held her close, torn between staying still and running for their lives. When the shooter moved into another room, they saw their moment. "We can't stay," the father whispered. "We have to go." Meanwhile, outside the library, a man who had come to pick up his wife and child dialed 911 while cautiously stepping through the doorway. What he witnessed inside was surreal. Two people lying motionless on the floor, blood pooling beneath them. "I'm at the library. Someone's shooting," he told the dispatcher, his voice shaking. Inside, chaos reigned. Victims crawled behind desks. Some froze in terror. Others tried to drag injured friends to safety. The shooter paced back and forth, calm, determined, and hunting for anyone who hadn't escaped. But help was already on the way. Police raced toward the building, aware that every passing second meant more danger for the civilians trapped inside. As they arrived, officers rushed through the doors, weapons raised, prepared for the unknown nightmare waiting for them inside. But what the officers didn't know then was that the shooter had come to the library for a reason, one he had been hiding for months, and what they were about to uncover would leave even seasoned investigators stunned. Want part two? As the first officers rushed toward the Clovis Carver Public Library, the situation inside was still unraveling at a terrifying pace. The gunman moved steadily between rooms, stepping over fallen books, overturned chairs, and the people who hadn't managed to flee. His calmness was chilling, almost mechanical, as if he were disconnected from the horror he was creating. For the victims still hiding, every second felt like a lifetime. Shelves became barricades, desks became shelters. Anyone who could still move searched desperately for safety. Near the back of the library, a group of staff members huddled together, their breathing sharp and uneven. One of them, a young assistant librarian named Jessica, had been shot in the shoulder. Blood seeped through the fabric of her shirt as she pressed her hand firmly against the wound. Her co-worker whispered, "Just stay awake, help is coming." But even she didn't fully believe it. On the other side of the library, another family crouched behind a row of low bookshelves, too afraid to move. The mother held her son close, whispering prayers into his hair as the footsteps of the shooter echoed somewhere behind them. Every time he fired, the sound tore through the library like lightning, leaving behind only ringing ears and stunned silence. Suddenly, the front doors burst open. Officers stormed in, shouting commands through the chaos. "Hands where I can see them! Move to us slowly! Stay down! Don't run!" Their voices were sharp, but their eyes scanned every corner with caution. In situations like this, anyone could be the shooter until proven otherwise. A man stood frozen near the entrance, phone still in his hand. An officer yelled, "Put the phone down! Hands up!" Startled, the man complied, trembling. Seconds later, police realized he was a survivor trying to find his family, not the shooter. Officers continued advancing. Every doorway was a potential ambush. Every hidden corner could conceal danger. Their boots crunched on glass and scattered debris as they pushed deeper inside, calling out, "Police! If you can hear me, call out!" From a cramped storage room, a small voice responded, "We're here! Please, help!" Inside, officers found a terrified mother clutching her child. The relief was visible, even through the tactical intensity of the moment. "You're safe," one officer whispered. "We've got you." But elsewhere, tragedy had already taken hold. Behind the circulation desk lay two staff members, motionless. Officers checked pulses. Their radios crackled. The realization hit them hard. The library, a place meant for learning and peace, had become a crime scene with victims who wouldn't be going home. Suddenly, one officer shouted, "Suspect located!" The shooter had walked calmly back toward the main room, hands raised, as if surrendering on his own terms. His expression was eerily blank. No tears, no panic, no remorse. Officers cuffed him immediately, searching him for weapons, while others secured the area to ensure no second shooter existed. Outside, chaos continued as paramedics tended to the injured. A father sobbed as his young son, a boy who was in the restroom at the same time as the shooter, was carried out with a bullet wound. Officers exchanged shaken glances, many knowing that the images of today would never leave them. Even as the suspect was pulled from the building, officers continued sweeping every room, every closet, every shadow, because at that moment they still didn't know the full scope of the bloodshed inside. With the suspect finally in custody, officers dragged him across the front lawn of the library. Even then, they treated him with extreme caution. Hands secured behind his back, ankles restrained, pockets checked twice. The boy in black didn't resist. In fact, he looked strangely calm, almost detached, as if he were simply being escorted out of a school hallway instead of a massacre site. "Sit down," an officer ordered. The young man nodded, lowering himself to the ground with surprising obedience. His voice was soft, almost polite when he asked, "Can I pick up my pants? They're falling." "No," the officer replied sharply. "Hands where I can see them." There was no anger in his tone, just the urgency of someone who had walked through blood minutes earlier and couldn't afford any mistakes. With the shooter secured, officers continued sweeping the building. More victims were discovered, more injuries confirmed, more scenes officers wished they could unsee. Outside, paramedics worked furiously. Inside, officers fought back emotion, trying to stay focused on their training. Meanwhile, the suspect was taken to the Clovis Police Department for processing. His name was confirmed: Nathaniel Jouett, a teenage boy, 2 years shy of adulthood, with no criminal record and no history of violence in public. His face, still marked with ink drawings his girlfriend had doodled earlier that morning, made him look even younger than he was. Inside the interrogation room, an officer asked him a simple question. "Do you understand your right to remain silent?" "Yeah." But silence was the last thing Nathaniel offered. He rambled, he repeated questions, he talked about random details, his clothes, his ears ringing from the gunshots,
needing to be somewhere at 6 p.m. as if nothing unusual had happened. It was as though he were drifting between reality and denial. "We believe people were hurt," the officer told him.
With the suspect finally in custody, officers dragged him across the front lawn of the library. Even then, they treated him with extreme caution. Hands secured behind his back, ankles restrained, pockets checked twice. The boy in black didn't resist. In fact, he looked strangely calm, almost detached, as if he were simply being escorted out of a school hallway instead of a massacre site. "Sit down," an officer ordered. The young man nodded, lowering himself to the ground with surprising obedience. His voice was soft, almost polite when he asked, "Can I pick up my pants? They're falling." "No," the officer replied sharply. "Hands where I can see them." There was no anger in his tone, just the urgency of someone who had walked through blood minutes earlier and couldn't afford any mistakes. With the shooter secured, officers continued sweeping the building. More victims were discovered, more injuries confirmed, more scenes officers wished they could unsee. Outside, paramedics worked furiously. Inside, officers fought back emotion, trying to stay focused on their training. Meanwhile, the suspect was taken to the Clovis Police Department for processing. His name was confirmed: Nathaniel Jouett, a teenage boy, 2 years shy of adulthood, with no criminal record and no history of violence in public. His face, still marked with ink drawings his girlfriend had doodled earlier that morning, made him look even younger than he was. Inside the interrogation room, an officer asked him a simple question. "Do you understand your right to remain silent?" "Yeah." But silence was the last thing Nathaniel offered. He rambled. He repeated questions. He talked about random details, his clothes, his ears ringing from the gunshots, needing to be somewhere at 6 p.m. as if nothing unusual had happened. It was as though he was drifting between reality and denial. "We believe people were hurt," an officer told him carefully. "I didn't think I hit anyone," Nathaniel replied, almost confused. "My ears, they're ringing. I can't hear right." Was he lying? Was he in shock? Was he truly disconnected from what he had done? No one could tell. Even the officers, trained, seasoned, hardened, exchanged glances. Something about this kid was wrong. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just unnerving in its cold emptiness. Later, after being transported to a hospital for clearance, Nathaniel revealed more. Nurses asked routine questions. "Do you drink? How much? Do you smoke? What medications do you take? Any mental health diagnoses?" His answers stunned them. Alcohol, drugs, counseling he had quit, depression, violent thoughts, all casually spoken as if he were discussing weekend plans instead of confessing a spiraling mental collapse. Back at the station, detectives pressed gently. "Why today? What made you do this? What were you thinking?" Nathaniel looked down, fiddling with his handcuffs. "I was mad," he muttered. "Everyone hates me. I get picked on, beat up. I couldn't take it anymore." "Did you tell anyone how you felt?" "No. Everyone's got their own problems." Then his reasoning slipped into something far darker. "I became a born-again Christian a month ago. I thought it would help, but I still felt angry, hopeless, like something needed to happen." Detectives listened, knowing that anger alone didn't explain the carnage inside that library. Something deeper, something far more disturbing had been brewing inside him. But the true horror of his intentions and what he had planned would only come to light when investigators uncovered the videos he recorded just minutes before the shooting.
In those videos, Nathaniel explained everything, not with regret, but with chilling clarity, and what he said would reveal just how dark his mindset was.
In the hours following the shooting, detectives combed through Nathaniel Jouett's belongings, his phone, his room, his social media accounts. They needed answers, clarity, anything that could help explain why a 16-year-old walked into a public library and opened fire on strangers. What they discovered sent a chill through every investigator who watched it. 2 videos, recorded only minutes, perhaps seconds, before Nathaniel walked out of his house for the last time as a free person. The clips weren't angry rants, they weren't chaotic or loud. Instead, Nathaniel spoke calmly, almost eerily composed, as if rehearsing lines for a role he had written for himself. "Hi, I'm Nathaniel," he began, staring straight into the camera. He apologized to his parents again and again, told them this wasn't their fault, begged them to remember the good moments, not the nightmare he was about to create. He apologized to his girlfriend, saying he loved her deeply and wished he could have married her one day. He insisted no one influenced him, that this was his decision alone. Then he said something that left investigators stunned. "I'm about to go NBK, natural-born killer. This isn't Columbine-inspired. This is my own thing." There was no hate speech, no manifesto about society, no political motive, nothing ideological. Just a teenager with a hollow expression and a chilling declaration that he was ready to commit violence for reasons he couldn't even fully articulate. "I'm angry," he said, "at the world, at myself, at everything. I feel hopeless. This needed to happen." Hopeless, needed. Words that painted a picture of a boy spiraling into darkness without anyone realizing how fast he was falling. Detectives replayed the videos again and again. Where was the trigger moment? What pushed him over the edge? Nathaniel blamed bullying. He blamed being suspended for a fight he claimed he didn't start. But video evidence of that scuffle told a different story. It wasn't the one-sided attack he portrayed. It was messy, chaotic, like many teenage fights, but hardly a reason for mass violence. Still, Nathaniel believed it was justification, a final wound to an already unstable mind. He spoke about quitting counseling, about feeling too ashamed to tell his pastor or girlfriend about the darker thoughts creeping into his head. He admitted he felt disconnected from the world, that he didn't know what else to do with the anger inside him. "I can't see myself doing anything else," he said in the final moments of his video. The emptiness of that statement hit investigators the hardest. It wasn't just rage, it was a complete collapse of his sense of self, his identity, his purpose. The violence wasn't a message, it wasn't a plan, it wasn't a rebellion. It was an escape. Inside the interrogation room, detectives watched him closely. Nathaniel didn't show anger, he didn't cry, he didn't show remorse. At times, he seemed confused about his own actions, as if he'd stepped outside himself and couldn't fully grasp what he had done. Yet in flashes, short, revealing moments, he admitted enough to confirm everything. "I yelled," he said softly. "I pulled the trigger. I think I hurt someone." Detectives told him the truth. "You didn't hurt someone. You hurt several people." Nathaniel just stared at the table, expression unreadable. Not shocked, not devastated, simply blank. But the deepest wound of all wasn't his confession. It wasn't even the videos. It was what happened next, the part where families learned the fate of their loved ones. Because while Nathaniel explained his motives, outside that room, parents were about to receive the news no one ever wants to hear. Want the final part 5?
As detectives pieced together Nathaniel's motives, another task, an emotionally crushing one, was unfolding elsewhere in Clovis. Families gathered outside the police perimeter, hoping, praying, trembling as they waited for any news. Some paced back and forth. Others sat numbly on the sidewalk, hands clasped tightly as if squeezing faith into their bones. One by one, officers approached them. Slow steps, lowered eyes, gentle voices hiding immense sorrow. Two names would change the atmosphere instantly. Christina Carter, the beloved children's librarian, known for her bright smile and warm voice during story time. Wanda Walters, a circulation assistant, respected and cherished for her kindness and patience with everyone who walked through the library's doors. Both had been killed inside the place they worked so hard to make safe and welcoming. The grief in the air felt heavy enough to suffocate. Friends cried openly. Employees held one another, shaking with disbelief. Even seasoned officers struggled to maintain their composure. A library, a sanctuary of learning, comfort, and innocence, was now the scene of unimaginable loss. Inside the building, paramedics carried out the wounded. One of them was 10-year-old Noah Molina, who had gone into the restroom only moments before the shooting began. He and his older sister were both injured, their lives forever changed by the violence they never saw coming. As Noah was lifted onto a stretcher, officers gently reassured him, "We've got you, buddy. Stay with us." Nearby, another victim, assistant librarian Jessica, was escorted out clutching her wounded shoulder. "Wife of an officer," someone whispered into a radio, and moments later her husband rushed toward the hospital with tears in his eyes but relief in his heart. She was alive. Others weren't as fortunate. And the weight of that truth settled heavily over every responder on scene. Back at the station, Nathaniel sat quietly, occasionally rubbing his ears as if the ringing bothered him more than the carnage he'd left behind. His father, meanwhile, arrived home only minutes after the shooting and immediately sensed something was wrong. Guns were missing from his safe. A strange $2 bill lay on Nathaniel's desk. Panic pushed him out the door and toward the police station, where he would soon learn the horrifying reality. In the interrogation room, detectives continued asking the questions no parent ever imagines being asked about their child. Did you plan this? Did you know what you were going to do? Why a library? Nathaniel's answers drifted between confusion and cold clarity. "I was mad," he repeated. "I didn't have hope. I don't really know why I chose that place." But investigators knew one thing for certain. Whatever anger festered inside him, it wasn't enough to explain the decision to take innocent lives. Eventually, the legal process unfolded. Nathaniel Jouett pleaded guilty to 30 felony charges, including the murders of Christina Carter and Wanda Walters and the severe injuries inflicted on 4 others. In 2019, he received 2 concurrent life sentences plus 40 years. Under laws at that time, he wouldn't have been eligible for parole until 2051. A long, distant future for someone who had taken so much from so many. But New Mexico law changed in 2023, banning life sentences for juveniles. Now offenders sentenced as minors can seek parole after serving 15 years. For Nathaniel, that means 2033, a date that many in Clovis speak of with unease, fear, and heartbreak. The community rebuilt, but the scars remain. The children who hid under tables remember the footsteps. The families remember the sirens. The survivors remember the silence that followed each gunshot. And the town remembers the day a quiet library became the center of a tragedy no one can ever forget. But the hardest truth remains. Even in the safest places, unseen storms can be quietly gathering, and no community is ever truly prepared for the moment they strike.